Please welcome Robert Ahern, VP and Managing Director, Americas.
On. Can you hear me? Okay. This is where you put these on. All right. Does anyone feel like you're on a Zoom call in person? Or is it just me? This is new for me too. So welcome to the second part of our day. We've got 3 sessions that will follow now. And our first session is learning all about the industry from an external industry expert perspective. And we're going to learn both about short-term rentals and hotels. And I'll introduce them shortly. Follow that with how we're adapting our business to cater more to the US growth and what we're doing to generate growth, both from a demand perspective with the traveler and how we're supporting our partners. And then usually one of our most requested sessions is our last one, which is a partner panel. Just a wonderful group of 4 different partners that I'll host. And we'll roll through a number of different questions to see what's on their mind as we think about 2023 and going forward as well, followed by a close from Fiona McDonald. So with that, I know there's not everybody that's come back yet, but I just wanted to let you know, do you remember Courtney from this morning? You know, Yeehaw, Yahoo. She just sent me a note and it said, hey, Bob, I'm not in the room, but I bet you can't get a yeehaw as loud as I did. And she knows I'm pretty competitive and kind of rise up to a challenge, but you know, just like we can't be successful without you, I can't be successful right now without you. So you can't even hear, no one's gonna hear what noise you make, only me and Courtney, and that's what matters. On 3, yeehaw. 1, 2, 3. Yeehaw! Oh, 10. That was better than when the room was full. That was awesome. All right, so now I'm going to welcome up our first. So we're going to have two speakers, 20 minutes each, and then we're going to have Q&A for about 10 minutes. So if you have any questions, go to the app, submit them. I'll be taking those on the iPad. In the meantime, we're going to start with AirDNA. And Jamie Lane will be coming up, followed by Jan Freitag, who is from STR, who you probably already know quite well. So with that, let me welcome Jamie Lane.
Hey everyone. This is so weird not being able to hear myself up on stage, but thank you all for having me here. Really appreciate the Booking.com team for inviting me. I want to start with maybe a show of hands to get a sense of the audience, since we are going to be talking about both hotels and short-term rentals, vacation rentals. Who here is on the vacation rental, short-term rental side? Show of hands. Okay, and who here is on the hotel side? And of all you hotel people, how many wish they would have been short-term rental, vacation rentals over the past couple of years? Maybe a few of you. I joke, but it has been good for short-term rental industry over the past couple of years. I'm going to have some charts about that, and we're going to talk through a lot of the trends. So to start off, AirDNA, some of you may not have heard of us before, but we track the global short-term rental industry. About 12 million listings around the world that we track on a day-to-day basis, how many bookings they're getting, the revenue that they're earning, and we distill that all into the trends that you're going to see here today. But to start off and to sort of level set what we've seen in terms of global demand and the recovery from the pandemic is one, we have recovered as an industry, even though not every continent has recovered. So the first to really get back was North America, and specifically the US. So we were fully recovered in terms of demand as of April 2021. that was remarkable speed of recovery. And you see, and it did not go as low as what we saw around the world. Europe was a year behind recovering as of last summer, and we're still very much in recovery mode for APAC and Oceania. We do expect them to get back in terms of 2019 levels of demand by mid-2024, but it has been some time. There has been global disruption in terms of both supply and demand. And this is data as of February on a trailing 12-month basis, and what we're seeing on both supply and demand. And you've got listing change on the vertical axis and demand change on the horizontal axis. And that is not a typo in terms of some cities are still 60% below 2019 levels of supply. And this is a mix of both what we've seen on both the demand destruction in terms of global travel, but also a new regulation, an existing regulation being enforced in a lot of these cities. So Amsterdam, Sydney, Barcelona, Boston, New York, London, Oahu, you see all those cities all with significant regulation around short-term rentals, still well below 2019 levels of supply. And I suspect many of these markets will never get back to 2019 levels. On the right side, these are our boom markets. These are some of the largest markets that have seen significant gains in both supply and demand. See all those in the blue, all those in North America, pretty much all of them in cities near and around where we're at today. So Santa Rosa, Gulf Shores, San Diego, Coachella Valley, Austin, all doing really well in terms of demand, and they've seen supply growth come off of it. So you can see here in terms of revenue, and the global short-term rental industry is very large, $142 billion earned that we tracked as of 2022. Massive growth, 25% supply growth over the past year, and about half of that revenue being earned in North America. We are a big portion of that overall revenue base. So I'm going to talk about demand in two ways now. And both of those ways that we're going to break out demand, the first, and we're seeing here, is based on the day, the month, the week of when that reservation is made. So real-time booking trends. And then the second one will be when the night is stayed. So, and in terms of the first 3 months of 2023, we have seen really strong booking activity, up about 13% year to date. And that is off of a really strong 2022 and we were all sort of locked down during Omicron. We started booking. We saw massive booking activity. You actually see that really take off in week 12 there in March last year. People really started booking. I was just looking at the updated data through that last week, and we exceeded even that accelerated pace. So booking activity has started strong. Stays has started even stronger, so up about 17%, 16% year to date. And we see that accelerating even further as we head into March. So people are traveling, they're booking out for the summer, and we'll see some of that forward pacing data as well. So now we're going to break out some of the location types and some of the demand trends that we've seen. Urban, as we saw in that sort of global disruption chart, has been one of the most impacted, and we're seeing really slow recovery. And we've sort of been stalled out around the 20% mark of below 2019 levels. If we look in the suburban areas of the cities, though, we've actually seen really strong demand and really good growth more recently. And suburban areas have been able to see strong demand, specifically attracting medical workers, university stays, midterm stays, so people looking to maybe move and needing temporary housing during that sort of migration period when they're looking to move to a new market. So that's really sustained city growth. Where urban, sort of in that downtown core, a lot of that being business demand, still hasn't fully come back, and where supply is still well below 2019 levels. Another big piece of urban demand that hasn't come back yet is international stays. So this is what this chart shows is the percent of overall demand coming from cross-border travel to the US. So from Canada, Mexico, the UK, France, China. And you see that urban type markets generated over 27% of their summer demand was from international travelers. This past summer, that only got back up to 18% of overall demand. And you look at it on a level-wise, we're still 50% below in terms of total number of international stays happening in those urban areas. This is going to be a major catalyst, though, for 2023 further recovery in these urban areas as international comes back. And we do expect that to further come back in 2023. Destination markets, though, a much lower percent, especially mountain and beach areas. Most of that is domestic travel, not a lot coming from international, though it has come back more quickly than some of the urban areas. And the non-urban, non-major cities, that's where demand growth has been the strongest. And now we're seeing it's still well over 50% of 2019 levels. So that's clearly pushed back. It recovered, almost didn't go negative in mountain areas. And we're clearing expansion mode, and supply growth has been really strong. And to getting into some of those trends, on occupancy. And occupancy is where we've actually seen some weakness in 2022 and in the first half of part of 2023. And what we're going to see is that 2021 was a high watermark for overall occupancy, and probably a level of occupancy that the industry will never, ever, ever see again. So typical occupancy in 2019 was about 52% for the industry. We got up over 60% in 2021. And there were two sort of major trends playing into that. One is we saw in 2020 leading into 2021, a 25% reduction in supply. And then very quickly we saw demand come back. So you have low supply, demand comes back really strong, and what does that mean? Occupancies go through the roof. And demand came back way quicker than supply could. And a lot of that was in destination markets. People had second homes. They wanted to use those second homes, and they brought that supply out of the rental pools. In urban areas, people converted their short-term rentals to long-term rentals. And really across all location types, there was supply disruption. And now you're seeing as supply comes back, and it's coming back really strong, given how high those occupancy levels got. And you see in those blue lines, we're seeing supply growth on a year-over-year basis above 15% for all location types throughout the country. Demand isn't quite matching that. And what that means is supply and occupancy, no matter what location type, has been negative on a trailing 12-month basis. And only half the markets now, though, are at 2019 levels. Though of those half that are growing, we see some massive growth. So you see markets like San Antonio, Gatlinburg, Dallas, Houston, Myrtle Beach, Panama City, all well north of 40% growth. And that's compared to 2019. So we are net really positive in terms of overall supply. And as a U.S. level, we're about 10 to 15% above 2019 levels, though. So even though overall growth is about 25% for the U.S. right now, it's not nearly that much higher than 2019 levels. So given that Jan's going to come on next and talk about overall hotel performance, I thought it'd be neat, though, to start with what we're seeing in terms of the overall competition with hotels and short-term rentals. Because believe it or not, Jan and I are pretty competitive. And we do look at this, and at least I'm keeping score when I look at this chart. Because what it shows is the percent of overall paid accommodations that's going towards short-term rentals. And from 2018 to 2020, we saw rapid growth in that share, essentially taking 2% per year. And no surprise, during the pandemic, that shot up well over 16% as demand in hotels really pulled back, and it pulled back in short-term rentals too, but not as much, and came back much quicker than overall hotel demand. But as of March 2021, share was essentially at the same levels. And a big piece of that was hotel supplies fixed. You can't get rid of hotels very easily, though maybe a lot of operators would have liked to during the depths of the pandemic, given that they were burning cash. And short-term rental supply really pulled back. So we had share gains, share at essentially the same level, 12%. And since then, we've been growing at a much slower pace, about 1% a year, which puts us, if you would have extended that line of what it would have been, given the sort of pre-pandemic pace, we would have been at 16% share, and we're only at about 13.5% share. The industry has also been getting much more professional. So we look at all units across the US and what percent is actually managed by larger operators. And that larger operator share has gone from about 10% in 2017 up to almost 25% today. And this is a lot of just the industry maturing, of larger operators sort of consolidating smaller ones. And as you've seen, the processes and tools for larger operators have made managing large groups of short-term rentals, essentially deconstructed hotels, much more efficient. That has allowed a lot of this growth, especially on the higher end. And then the other sort of competition with hotels is on price. And price is something that is generally the number one reason or number two reason outside of location of why a consumer chooses a short-term rental over a hotel. And over the past 3 years, we've seen massive price appreciation. If you just look at the sort of headline number that we put out, it would show that prices are up 35%. And I know Jan's going to come out here and show that hotels are actually up, I think, about 16, 15% above 2019 levels. But the thing with short-term rental supply is that each unit is totally unique. We see a large amount of churn, so the units today are not the exact same units that we were looking at in 2019. So what we do is we control for that, looking at a same-store sample from today relative to 2019. And what that shows us when we look at that same store sample is ADR is only up about 18% for short-term rentals, which roughly puts us in line with the ADR growth that we've seen with hotels. So we're still really competitive, and still consumers are looking to short-term rentals as the price-sensitive option, especially when traveling with families, traveling for long periods of time, for that type of option. So still really price competitive. And you can see here on that chart on the right what the mix shift has looked like in terms of occupancy growth over the past 3 years. So many more people staying in the larger homes, which has pushed that overall rate higher. And then as we look out over the next few months, we do expect rate growth to slow. And as of this time last year, rates were growing 10, 15%. Now we're seeing much slower growth. We're going to see future rates in the low to near 0% growth. So our outlook, who knew that the BLS, sort of the government statistics agency, actually tracked vacations? I didn't know. And this is one of my favorite statistics looking at on a month-to-month basis. But when they do the employment, the BLS employment survey, they ask if you were employed, and then were you working last week? And if you weren't working, they ask you why you weren't. And one of those answers you can choose is that you were on vacation. So during the pandemic, obviously, the number of people saying that they were on vacation dropped dramatically. But now what we've seen is that the number of people saying they're on vacation again has now reached well above those pre-pandemic levels. And one of the other questions they ask is, or one of the options you could give is that you were sick. And during the pandemic, a whole lot of people started to say that they were sick and that was the reason why they weren't working. And now for the first time, we've actually seen the number of respondents say that they're going on vacation has grown at a faster rate than they were sick when compared to 2019. If that is not a fun metric of saying that we are through this pandemic, I don't know what else is. That was an economist joke. What I look at most closely in getting a sense of what the overall health of the economy, specifically when looking at leisure travel demand, one is jobs, and specifically job growth. Because if people have a job, they're going to take vacations. And that has been proved out over and over and over again through previous cycles. And what we've seen is job growth has been really strong, and a large percent of that job growth has been coming from our sector, the leisure and hospitality sector. The other is in terms of consumer spending. And this is where we've actually seen some weakness in recent months as consumer incomes have started to come back on a real terms. But what we've seen in terms of the pullback has primarily been on goods, and that consumers are still looking to spend on services, and that a greater percent of their wallet is going towards services, and is not fully back to 2019 levels yet. So typically a consumer spends about 70% of their income on services. We're only about 67% back. So we still have a long way to go. And that is some tailwinds further that we have for spending on travel. The outlook from Oxford is a recession in the back half of this year. And I will say that while I expect there to be a recession, I don't expect there to be a recession for the travel and hospitality industry. Forward nights are looking really strong, so we're pacing up over 12% over the summer. There's a lot of tailwinds, as I said, around international travel coming back, of consumers looking to spend more and more of their wallet share on travel, on services. There's still pent-up demand for travel. And we expect for short-term rentals demand to be up by another 10% in 2023 compared to 2022. And that's with a recession baked into our outlook. If there wouldn't be a recession in the back half of the year, we would expect that outlook to be even higher for short-term rental demand. I'd note we are forecasting further declines in occupancy. So from 61% at the peak in 2021, we dropped down to 57% or 58% in 2022. We expect it to drop further to 57% in 2023. And then overall, we do expect a decline in RevPAR of down roughly 1% as ADRs won't be able to cover that. And with that, I appreciate your time. I will be back up with Jan for questions afterwards.
Thank you, Jamie. That was super insightful, and I especially love the combination of when we look at STR versus hotel. I haven't seen that from an economist perspective before. So without delay, let's welcome Jan to the stage. Jan is from STR. I think most of you are familiar with STR or the STAR report. And now we'll extend into the hotel space. Welcome, Jan.
Good afternoon. I hope you're listening to some awesome music. This looks so weird. This is so funny. Hi, thank you to Booking.com for having me. We want to share with you, 40 minutes. He just did 20 on short-term rentals. Yes, we are competitive, but I think we're winning, so I'm fine, not keeping track. So I want to tell you about the state of the industry. Yes, I used to with STR for 21 years, and now I'm with CoStar full-time. CoStar owns STR, so if you are, show of hands, I think you did it earlier, a lot of you are hotel people, so thank you for subscribing to your STAR report. You're paying my paycheck, so I appreciate that. I don't have any answers, I just have questions, because this is just, who knows? I don't know, I'm supposed to know, and I don't know. So here are the questions, right? Leisure rates, can they be sustained? Can group growth continue? We think so. Return to office, impact on corporate transient demand. in my opinion, is the defining question of the hotel industry this year and probably next year. We're going to talk about two real estate pieces. Dorothy Downing this morning teed it up so nicely. This is indeed a real estate industry. I know yet most of you are in ops, but you're reporting to owners, and the owners care about real estate. I want to just give you 4 slides on sort of high-level real estate topics so you sound even smarter in your quarterly meetings. So talk about pipeline and transactions. First stop, the world. 4 slides on the world. What I'm doing here is I'm indexing the occupancy 3 months ending in February 2019 compared to 3 months ending February this year. And if the number is above 100, that means we are doing better. And the number is below 100, we're not. And oh wow, so a lot of us are not actually, a lot of us have not fully recovered. Obviously, APAC still in a world of pain. Europe still not recovered. North America. A lot of this, I think, can be attributed to the individual, corporate, transient traveler not being fully back on the road. You see there, of course, are bright spots, Middle East, Central America. On the rate side, we're doing exactly the same thing. We're indexing to 2019, the 3 months ending in February. If you're above 100, you're fully recovered. If you're below 100, you haven't. Who hasn't? Mainland China, probably not a big surprise. So in Europe, room rates today are 22% higher than they were in 2019. In North America, they're 18% higher than they were in 2019. North Africa, there's some currency in there, but 70% more expensive. Everybody wants to go to Marrakesh, I guess. So there is a lot of pricing power. I think we're seeing that on the short-term rental side. We're certainly seeing that on the hotel side, especially on the resort side. The next 2 slides are sort of data overload, but you love it, I know. So here are markets. Just let this wash over you and look on the lower left-hand side where it says the absolute level of occupancy is either under 50, it's red, nobody's red, or between 80 and 100%. There are a few markets like that, but the majority of markets are running an absolute level. This is not index, this is absolute level of occupancy, between 50 and 70% or so. Miami, had a pretty hot spring break, as you may have heard. New York City, London, Paris, all those markets are doing quite well. This is just for February. This is just the beginning of the real travel season. And then we're looking at the same markets, room rate. This is in local currency. Again, I'm using an index here. The green dot means we're above 2019. And the point is just to say, oh, wow, well, there's pricing power everywhere. But look at the specific numbers. So Paris, 154. Room rates today in Paris are 54% higher than they were 3 years ago. Arguably driven by the American leisure traveler with a very healthy exchange rate saying, I want to go to Paris. And they did. So we did. And you see overall in North America, room rates are up. Call that, 15, 20% or so. So that's the world. It's a big world out there, so it's sort of a spot. It's sort of hard to synthesize this into 1 or 2 main bullets. It's really market by market. APAC is recovering. Yes, that's, I think, is the good news. Jamie shared with you his forecast. This is the one you want to take a photo of. This is the forecast. I mean, you can take photos of everything. We're going to share the slides, by the way. Just, like email me, whatever. You can get them. But so this is the one that matters. There's a lot going on. This is really a handout more than a slide, honestly. So the 2 numbers that matter are, number 1, 2023 RevPAR percent change forecasted 3.7%. That number is less than 29.8%, in case you're wondering. That, of course, is not surprising, right? We weren't expecting 30% growth rates unless something terrible happens and we're coming out of it, right? So this is more a normal RevPAR change. But the other number that's super interesting and that we pay a lot of attention to is the inflation-adjusted RevPAR growth. And you're seeing, and we're calling that real growth. And you see that we will not get back to 2019 real RevPAR levels until 2025. In other words, yes, room rate growth is here, and that's great. But inflation is here too. And inflation eats up a lot of the room rate growth that we are observing. Now, Tourism economics, our friends are proposing that inflation at the end of this year actually has like a 4 handle, maybe something like that. So it's coming way down from the 9% that it was. But nonetheless, we're saying ADR is up 2%, 3%. That is still probably below inflation. So your mileage may vary, but that's certainly something to keep an eye on. Your owners care a lot about that. The other thing, I put this on LinkedIn, and Jamie scolded me publicly, said my headline is wrong, because I said RevPAR growth in a recession has never happened. And he's like, well, Jan, technically, if you look back to 1972, I'm like, okay, fine. So we only have data back 30 years. So in the last 30 years, it hasn't happened. So what we're proposing is something almost unprecedented, that there will be growth in RevPAR, despite the fact that tourism economics is saying, yes, there will be a recession in Q2 and Q3 of this year in America. So, wow, that's pretty wild. You saw Jamie's RevPAR projection for short-term rental is like slightly negative. We are slightly positive. And the question now is, how is this recession playing out? We just have to take the house call. Yes, there will be a recession, but it's probably going to be pretty mild. And with inflation continuing, we think there's more pricing power for hoteliers. Looking back, 2022, how was it? Well, it was pretty good. We had, for the first time, 2 billion room nights available. We sold 1.3 billion of those. Occupancy roughly 63, just below 63%. Average rate roughly $150. Compare that year-over-year change, you see, room rates are up, oh wow, almost 20%. RevPAR is up, oh wow, almost 30%. Compared to 2019, room demand is still not where it was, down 2.5, call that, but a lot of pricing power, 13.6%. The problem, of course, is that inflation was what, like 15, right? So yes, that looks good on paper, a lot of pricing power, but inflation really matters. This is my favorite chart. I made it myself. This encapsulates basically the 3 main storylines that drove the US hotel industry. What I'm doing here is I'm looking at all the classes, and I'm showing you the RevPAR percent change compared to 2019 in 2022. And I'm looking at all the location types. Our location types vary slightly from what Jamie is using. So if you were a luxury resort, rock and roll, life was awesome, right? You did really, really well. If you were a mid-scale economy type property in a highway location, and we talked about road trips earlier, 17 hours, you want to do that once, and that's about it. And I've been there, trust me. But drive to destinations, right? What does drive to mean? In the pandemic, Dallas to Yosemite was suddenly drive to, right? Amazing. Hopefully those days are behind us. But so if you were mid-scale economy in an interstate, or what we call small town metro, in a secondary market, you did really well. If you were upper upscale, so your super tanker hotels with lots of ballroom space, in an urban location, you are in a world of hurt. And we will talk about that. But that combination has dragged down the industry because of the lack of the corporate transient traveler. The next 4 slides are a little dense, but you love them anyway, so bear with me. What I'm doing here is I'm indexing again to 2019, and I'm breaking out the occupancy for these specific months, and I'm saying, is the occupancy above or below where it was in 2019? Oh, wow, it actually isn't at all above 2019. So it's all below, basically. Weekends are okay, like we've almost recovered the occupancy fully. Weekdays are not okay. This goes back to that urban upper upscale comment I made earlier. And this shoulder day, that was always sort of we didn't think about it. Suddenly, wow, people travel on the shoulder days. Like they come in Thursday, or they stay over on Sunday, they fly out on Monday or so. And they're combining, their weekend trip with like a day or 2 on each end to work, WFH, work from hotel, right? Because they can. And so we heard earlier, like we call that bleisure or bleisure, something like that. Luckily, the Wall Street Journal actually told us what it's called. Mullet travel. Business in the front, party in the back. And that's the term we're using from here on in. So if you check in early, you are a mullet traveler. You break out the weekday performance and something super interesting appears. Who's hurting? Who's not getting the occupancy? It is the full service, high-end properties. On the luxury side, whatever, you're fine. You're charging whatever you can, and I see your numbers, so you are. But what's interesting is the weekday occupancy recovery is on the lower scales, right? It's in this drive-to destinations. It's the salespeople who drive in a 3-state radius or something. Those are back on the road. Small and medium-sized companies, are definitely back on the road. Who's not really on the road is the Fortune 100, and we see that in that specific chart. Weekend occupancies, on the other hand, are a little bit better, but again, here we're seeing upscale, upper mid-scale, and mid-scale economy are doing a lot better. You see that the luxury and upper upscale class occupancies, they still haven't recovered, call that down 12% or so, 10 to 12%. But that's fine because the ADRs are so strong, and that's what this chart is. So this is weekend ADR growth compared to 2019. Yes, these numbers are pretty strong. And so the two storylines are here. The leisure traveler has money to spend and wants to spend it, and you are willing takers. And the weekday traveler is not quite back yet. So we are seeing not as much pricing power on weekdays, which traditionally has been the corporate transient traveler. So the question that I had earlier, that I'm putting on here, has ADR growth peaked? Well, compared to 2019, we may actually see the growth rate slowing a little bit. Part of that is math, and write this down because it's complicated. So your individual transient traveler, your individual leisure traveler, their room rates may go up, but the ADR reported by STR may come down. How is that possible? Well, we're layering in a different mix of customer, right? We have group and corporate negotiated, which we didn't have in 2022. So as that mix shifts, we may see a deceleration in ADR, even though your bar rate stays as high as you can get it. So keep that in mind. What's a success story of the upturn? Group, clearly. Because if we're not in the office, or we're only in the office 2 days a week, our head of HR still has to build culture. And how do they build culture? Oh, let's just all go to, Miami on Wednesday night, team dinner, Wednesday morning, Thursday morning training, Thursday afternoon team building, another team dinner, everybody leaves. So there are no group trips we didn't have in 2018 because we had a water cooler, right? We were all in the same office all the time, and now we're not. But we still have to get together, and that's why conferences like these are so well attended, because we don't want to make 17 trips to have 17 meetings, but maybe go to a conference and have 2 days of meetings. The cost per contact is so much cheaper in venues like this. So I'm very bullish on group going forward. Very briefly on the real estate side. Again, this is just sort of background noise for most of you, but you need to understand the environment that your owners are thinking about. Number one, pipeline. 0.6% change. What was Jamie's number? 30. Very different. It's really hard to build hotels. And then you have Silicon Valley Bank go under and a lot of regional banks pulling back, and a lot of construction was financed by local and regional banks, and they're going to be like, I'm out. So we're going to see a ballooning, which we're already seeing, in final planning. So you're almost ready, and then you don't have financing. And so you have beautiful plans and maybe a piece of dirt and people ready, and no, you can't start construction. So that's probably what's going to happen in 2023. The number of rooms in construction is either going to stay steady or decelerate slightly. That said, there are markets where we're having a ton, technical term, of new supply coming in. For example, New York City has 12,000 rooms under construction. It's a little bit of the, what's that snake? The anaconda, I guess, eating the elephant or eating the pig. Like there's a lot, and then there's going to be nothing. They changed the legislation. We can talk about it in the Q&A. It's really not that interesting. But point is, a lot of developers rushed to break ground, and there's going to be not a lot of new construction in New York City. So this is an outlier. But still, look at the percent increase. That's like 9% of new supply coming into the city. Whoa. Phoenix, Detroit, Dallas, Nashville, where I'm based, it's crane city, cranes everywhere. There's just a lot of new supply in the Sun Belt states. You can't beat demographics, and that's where we see the attractiveness of new construction. 2 slides on deals. Number 1, we are seeing the number of new deals probably accelerate as current owners have to refinance and realize that the interest that they used to pay was like a 3% interest rate, and now it's a 7% interest rate? And for some owners, they're going to be like, I'm done. Some of your owners may then therefore say, hey, let's buy some stuff. So it's going to be super interesting to see how prices develop. We think that there's going to be a lot of activity. Where the activity has already happened is on the very, very high end, with prices per key that used to be unfathomable. $2.5 million a key is unheard of, and suddenly there are a bunch of hotels. Oh, that's cut off here, but the Four Seasons Jackson Hole was also $2 million a key. Four Seasons in Nashville, just because I'm based there, was purchased in a forward contract literally at the beginning of the pandemic in April of 2020 for $168 million, and then refinanced for a value of $280 million. The owner, through the 3 years of the pandemic, by just sitting on it and waiting, made $120 million. How are you doing? So there's a lot of interest in the very, very high end. That will not cease. We will see more trades like that. So can lead rates be sustained? I think so, but I think this comment that we heard earlier about trades, there's probably something to it. So you may not have the same customer. They may trade down, but then they're willing to pay for a nicer room in a lower category. Can group growth continue? We are betting on it. How will return to office / corporate transient, how will return to office impact corporate transient demand growth? I have no idea. And I'm supposed to know. And honestly, you ask 10 people, you got 12 answers. That is the question. Are we coming back to the office? And if so, what does that do to corporate transient demand? There's probably a relationship there. Like if more people are in the office, yes, more people will travel to those offices. But Zoom and Teams, man, hallelujah. I love it. I mean, I used to do this, I don't know, every week. Not that I don't love you, but, like sitting on my desk at home is just so much more comfortable. Transaction volume can hold or accelerate? Yes, we think so. Oh, and then we got to talk about this. Are the robots our friend? So, ChatGPT, who's used it? Bard.google.com, who's used it? Really? How'd you get in? I want to get in. I'm on a wait list. So, after this presentation, or right now if you want to, check this out. It's going to change your life. Honestly, ChatGPT is the future, and Jamie and I just talked about use cases. There's just so much. You're limited by your imagination. Turns out I'm not that imaginative, but there are a lot of people out there who are putting ChatGPT through its paces, and you can do some fascinating things. Like I'm in the business of creating content, and I'm scared because I said, hey, tell me about the state of the hotel industry in 3 paragraphs. And it comes back in 0.8 seconds in something that is like good. And I'm like, oh my God, that's my job. So I went crying to my wife, and she's like, yeah, but isn't it possible that it just took what you wrote? I'm like, that's right. That's the answer. So I'm going to produce content that then goes into ChatGPT. So I was at the Dell, lovely hotel, and they don't have they have a front desk, but they don't want you to talk to them anymore. So you text them, right? So I'm like, hey, because I'm an idiot, what's the Wi-Fi password, by the way? And it came back immediately. And here it is, Dell Memories. I'm like, oh, could have thought about that. And then, hey, while I have you, can you put my Hilton Honors Club on this? And they're like, yep, absolutely. Or actually, it's already there. I'm like, wow, that was so fast. Are you a human? Like, is this a person? Or is it a robot? And do I care? Like, I don't actually care because it's helped me solve my problem. And they should be dealing with more important issues. The humans, So I was like, wow, that's going to be the future. And the truth is, for this issue, I don't care. So this is going to come your way. I know Booking is talking about integrating it. I know a bunch of the other OTAs are talking about integrating it. This is going to be the new way we interact. And please spend 2, 3, 5 hours and get into this, because it's going to be with us from here on in. Or have your kids teach you, either way, because they're using it to their homework, by the way. But it's not all just scary. Some of it is actually super funny. So, please write me a short poem about the joys of working in hotel marketing and revenue management. It comes back 0.2 seconds later. The thrill of filling rooms each night with guests from near and far is what's making working in hotel marketing a shining star. From crafting campaigns that drive demand to pricing rooms just right, revenue management is an art that brings such delight. The joy of seeing guests content with their stay and all it brings is what makes working in a hotel a true heartstring. So here's to the joys of working in hotel marketing and revenue, for every day is an adventure and a chance to create something new. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Very, very interesting. So two things why don't you come on back, Jamie? We'll do a little bit of Q&A. So two things I took away from Jan's talk here. Number one, I think I could grow a mullet, maybe, on a good day. Yeah. And secondly, I think you said that coming to Click was worth 17 trips. So we're reducing 16 trips. So we're already taking friction out of the process, I think. I'm not sure.
I agree.
But anyways, for all of you, by the way. All right, we've got a few questions here. Really for both of you. Oh, first of all, you said you would distribute the slides. There's also a question, you both will.
Yep.
The answer is yes, sure. We will distribute slides. There's a question around how you earn revenue as companies. So I think it's just more VRBO and hoteliers or how, briefly.
So our main client is people looking to buy homes and bring them into the short-term rental market. Understand, I'm going to buy this address, and if you go to our website, you can put in any address in the world, and we'll tell you what that home could earn as a short-term rental. And then we're going to give you that much, then the detail around it, like what the occupancy would be by month, what the ADRs would be, and then how do you revenue manage that property. So how should you price that unit then every night into the future, what the pacing is, all the information you need to know to operate that unit really efficiently.
Very good.
CoStar is the premier provider of general commercial real estate information. So what's the average square foot lease in a retail mall? How much does an office tower sell for? Who's building another hotel on XYZ corner? They bought STR at the end of 2019, right before the pandemic, and I'm their national director. So I talk to the CoStar clients, meaning the real estate, hedge funds and PE guys who are CoStar subscribers. I still love hotel people, of course, that's why I'm here. So I talk to still hotel owners and operators, but a lot of it is a lot of the CoStar subscribers.
Very good. Jamie, for you. What is it that vacation rentals can do to increase bookings due to the saturation of new product in the market? Do you have any perspective on that?
Yeah, one is differentiation. So there is a ton of cookie cutter homes out there that maybe people brought on because it was easy, and it's still furnished with your grandmother's old furniture. It is maybe not built for or furnished for kids, for bachelor parties. There's so many types of groups, types of travel happening that wants to stay in short-term rentals, and making your units really attractive for all those different types of groups and is one way and you can make sure you're getting bookings where everyone else maybe not.
Very good. Thank you. Jan, one for you. Any recommendations for mixing up competitive sets to reflect today's customer preferences?
Yeah, see me after class. I mean, that we can talk about that for 3.5 hours. It's a lot of people have multiple competitive sets. You can do it by geography, just like 1.5 miles around you, and then you do it by group customer. Who is talking? Who the meeting planners that come to you? Which other hotels are they talking to? And then you maybe do one just for the weekends because your leisure mix is different.
Very good.
But there's a longer conversation there.
Quick one for you. Do either of you have plans to acquire more international market data going forward?
I mean, we're already there. We're in 180 countries, so whatever you want, we got, arguably.
Yeah, and our data set for the U.S., and is just as good as it is for any country around the world. So our data, our website is fully, you search Paris, you search Shanghai, any city around the world, we've got data for it.
So some of the others are more general in nature. I've got a question or two for you. Number one, really curious, lots of data, amazing, and I love the relationship that you have and the history and how you complemented each other's stories here. When it comes to vacation rental and it comes to hotel in the US, is one compromising the other or taking share from the other? When you look at everything that you presented today, or are both expanding, both kind of going same direction? How would you summarize that?
You go first.
In 2019, the US hotel industry sold more rooms than ever. And short-term rentals did quite well. So I have no idea if we were cannibalized because we sold more rooms than ever. So I don't know what the delta is that we're leaving on the table. You know, we were pretty full. So we've talked about this a little bit. There is probably an argument in high demand nights for high demand events, South by Southwest, Formula One, whatever, that short-term rental demand, supply surges up because people leave town and say, hey, I'm going to put this on, name your provider. And that we may see that the compression night delta on the hotel side may shrink. That you used to have pricing power to increase your ADR by 2x, and you can only do it by $50 or so. But other than that, go ahead.
Yeah, and most of the product in terms of short-term rentals is very differentiated from hotels. In the areas where there is overlap, and I think there's absolutely competition, in most of those type of cities, primarily, we've seen massive decreases in short-term rental supply. I think that's actually been really helpful for a lot of these hotel markets to actually recover. The other point I want to make is short-term rentals in urban areas, primarily at a much lower price point. So we did a one-to-one study, urban and one-bedroom studios compared to average hotels, 30% cheaper. I think it definitely expands the pie and allows many more people to travel to these markets. And also, as length of stays have expanded, maybe that 2-night stay, you're going to stay in a hotel, and 2-night stays, I'm staying in a hotel. But when it goes to 4 or 5 nights, I think that's when the options of short-term rentals become much more apparent. And you see it in the hotel data. Extended stay hotels have probably been one of the best performing sectors.
Absolutely.
So
awesome. Yeah. Very good. Go ahead. Final comment?
If I just, I'm in and out for a night, I'm in my room for 7 hours maybe. I want good Wi-Fi and ESPN. Thank you very much. That's it. And yeah, give me my points, sure. So that's, I think, there are specific use cases for specific accommodation types. And so it's sort of hard to sort of put a blanket over that and say yes, they're competitive or no, they're not.
You guys are awesome. Thank you so very much.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate you sharing with us today. Very good.